Truck drivers, hard-working people who make a living by transporting all manner of goods across the world. It's not an easy job by any means, and boy, do they have some stories to tell. But be warned, one of these stories in particular is quite horrific, and if you don't want the imagery, you can click the timestamp in the description to jump straight to the second story. Number 1. This happened to me when I was 15. My dad ran a wrecker service for over-the-road truckers. Late one night, we got a call that a truck had run off the road and struck a tree 20 miles south of town. So my father and I fired up the wrecker and headed south. When we came to the scene, the truck and trailer had ran off the road to the right and smacked a tree head on. It was one of those 100-year-old oak trees. This was back in the day when there were cab-over semi-trucks, or the ones without noses or the engine is underneath the cab. The truck was still running at idle. The doors were closed, but no driver was seen in the driver's window. The front driver's windshield was busted, and there was a large hole in the middle. The trailer was loaded with flat quarter-inch steel sheets. Of course, it's pitch black, and you can't really see things that well. When we first got there, our impression was that the driver smacked the tree, hit his head on the windshield, and was already getting treatment somewhere else. So my dad set up the wrecker to hook onto the trailer, and he wanted me to open the cab up in order to release the brakes. When I opened the door, I was greeted with the lower half of a body. When the driver hit the tree, a single sheet of steel broke free and cut through the cab, cutting the driver in half. The upper half of his body went through the windshield. I found the driver's upper half in a cornfield, about 40 feet from the truck, and he was still grabbing the upper part of the steering wheel. It looked like he was frozen in time, still driving the truck. Needless to say, he went into a body bag with his lower half, and we worked through the night, getting the truck and trailer back to town. This is one of many experiences I've had growing up in a wrecker service family. Number 2. I used to drive I-80 between San Francisco and Cheyenne, Wyoming, a lot. It is about 16 to 20 hours of driving, depending on weather and traffic and whatever. Anyway, I was driving at night, and the car starts making this odd grinding noise, as if I ran over something that got stuck. It's about 2 a.m. I pull into a rest stop that's well lit, and wake up my buddy who was sleeping. I explain to him, as we both get out the car, that I heard what sounded like a kid crying. There are no other cars at the rest stop on this windless night, but we frequently heard stories about child trafficking and kidnapping nearby. So we decided to check it out. We grab our flashlights and head towards the noise, which is coming from the bathrooms. As we get closer, we realize it's coming from the women's bathroom. It's a low, dull sobbing. We walk in, expecting to see some brutally beaten and/or raped 8-year-old or something. And we see nothing. The sound is still there. It's clearly coming from the room. But the room is empty. We turn on the lights. Still nothing. Check each stall, the trash can, everything. We start looking for everywhere in the room, but it's coming from nothing. Is it a hidden speaker? Are we on candid camera? What the hell? My buddy climbs up on one of the stools, to get to the top window in the rest stop, which is vented out and open. He closes it, and the noise stops completely. He opens it again, and there's no more noise. We sit there for a few seconds, staring at each other. He shrugs. The window then slams shut again, without him touching it. We were out of that bathroom in seconds. The noise started up about 10 seconds after, just as we were getting to the car, and we were tearing out of the parking lot within 10 seconds. The grinding noise was still there. So at the time, I pull over a few miles later at a Flying J truck stop, well lit and sometimes occupied. Couple of truckers there, no other civilians like us. We check under the car. There's a red and silver piece of metal wedged between the part of the car and the road, about half an inch off the ground or so. So with us in the car, it would have definitely been grinding against the ground. I can't remove it by hand, it's really wedged in there. So we kick at it to bend it and figure that we'll remove it when we get back. A week later, I had my mechanic take a look at it when he was doing a service. It was part of a kid's tricycle. Number 3. My dad was in Albuquerque. He stopped for the night at a pawn shop parking lot. It was around 10:30 p.m. and his air compressor was empty. Earlier that night he had rolled down the windows, but since the compressor was out, he couldn't roll back up until it refilled. Anyway, he's getting ready for bed, and a voice yells at him not to move. A female Puerto Rican tweaker jumped into the truck from the driver's side. The voice was on the passenger side window and pressed a gun to his head, ordering him to give her all his money and belongings of value. Unfortunately for her, my dad doesn't ever carry cash on him, and the poor guy never buys himself anything expensive. He had about $60, a broken laptop, a cup of change, and his clothes, blankets, and toiletries. Of course, he did have his credit card and debit card. They held him hostage there for more than an hour as she unloaded everything from the cab and handed it to her 300-pound male friend. According to my dad, homegirl was tripping balls the entire time. She ordered him to follow her to the ATM, but considering that my dad owns his own business, it probably wouldn't have ended well when she'd have seen his accounts. He decided he couldn't let it happen. After a few more minutes, she decided that they were walking to the ATM. She had her friend on the passenger side help her down, ordering my dad to follow. As soon as she was clear of the door, he closed the door, locked it, and tried to honk the horn, but it hardly made an audible noise. Apparently, this was enough to send the trio running into the darkness with blankets in hand. Shaken, my dad called the police. Surprisingly, they had an amazing response. 15 to 20 patrol cars, a helicopter, dogs, etc. were there within 5 minutes. 2 of them were caught, but not the third one. Number 4. My dad drives in Texas a lot, but there is a particular road he always avoids. I'm not sure which road it is, but he says it's in the middle of old Native American land. On a cloudless night, he was driving through. He kept seeing shadows run along the side of his trailer. Every once in a while, he would hear a loud bang, as if someone was slapping the side of the trailer. After a while, he was getting tired of it. It could have possibly been something that demanded his attention. So he decided to stop and see if perhaps a tire had blown, because that was probably the most likely thing that could be making the noise. He opened the door and stepped out. He did his usual walk around, checking the tires. But as he turned the corner, he heard a laugh, and a shadow took off running down the road. Needless to say, he shit his pants and jumped into the truck. He was driving like a maniac, and about 15 miles later, he saw the skinwalker standing on the side of the road with its arms crossed. He didn't stop until daylight. Number 5. Many years ago, I was on what was called a meet and turn. This is where a driver that is domiciled out of one city will drive a load halfway to its destination, whilst a driver domiciled out of that destination will drive halfway with a load that is destined for my city. We met in a parking lot, switched trailers, and drive back home. I had been on this run for a few months, and found that I always got to the meet point about an hour before the other driver. It was a dark and empty dirt lot around 3 AM, so I would stretch across the seat and take a short nap. One night, about 10 minutes into my nap, I was awoken by a barking dog. I tried to ignore it, but it carried on for several minutes and got louder as the dog got closer. Soon, it became apparent that the dog was right outside my truck, barking at me. Okay, either this dog is Lassie and trying to alert me of something, or else it's just a pain in the ass and I'll need to throw something at him to scare him off. It's important to note, the barking had been going on for a good 10 minutes at this point. So I sat up and looked out my window. Standing there, mere inches on the other side of the glass, was a man about 35. He was a large fellow, and was barking at me. His eyes were crazy, and he was frothing from the mouth a little. The scene really held my attention for a moment. The sheer creepiness of this struck me. Gently, and making an absolute minimum of sudden movement, I reached down and started my truck, and slowly pulled away. He chased me, much like you'd expect an angry dog to do, barking all the while. Needless to say, it played hell with my power naps from then on. Number 6. I've been a long-haul truck driver for a few years, and just spending every day out on the road is pretty crazy. You see a lot through the windshield of a truck. The image that sticks out with me the most are the dead people that you see. There was a bad incident one night in Chicago. It was late, rainy, on the interstate by Wrigley Field, and all I could see were flashing lights in the opposite lane. I don't usually rubberneck because I don't want to see other people's misfortune, but this time I did. There was a dead family lying broken on the road, and the first responders were pretty much just standing around, waiting for the coroner to arrive. I can still see the flashing lights in the rain, and the little dead baby lying 30 feet away from its dead parents. I wish I had never looked. Another time again in Chicago, probably around Gary, I saw a possible drunk driver in a fancy car, driving erratically on the interstate. I called the police and gave them the mile marker where it was so that they could try and stop it. I lost sight of the car as it sped off, but a few miles down the road, it was flipped over on the other side of the freeway, engulfed in flames. I don't think the driver made it out, as there was no one standing beside it. One night in northern Ontario, I was climbing a hill on a single lane back up top, and just as I crest the hill, there is a minivan coming straight at me in my lane, and a long line of cars that are passing the other. I have nowhere to go, and I'm not allowed to leave my lane of traffic even if that means killing you. So I hit the brakes, even managing to lean forward and grab the trailer spike to use all the brakes, knowing these two things. I'm about to kill someone in this minivan, and that I am about to be covered in thousands of gallons of horse piss that I was hauling in the trailer. Luckily, the stupid minivan was able to get back on the other lane when other vehicles started hitting their brakes to avoid the incident that was about to happen. Things like this I remember. Nearly dying in accidents, nearly killing people as they cut you off, not realizing how long it takes for a truck to stop. There are good days to driving trucks, but the bad ones are the reasons I quit. Bonus story number 7. My uncle was a long-haul truck driver back in the 90s. Mainly did international runs from Canada down to the US and then back to Canada. He had a pretty nice new Kenworth that had one of those maximum size sleepers on it, a built-in toilet and the works. He decided that the small tank that came with the toilet was a pain in the ass to have to empty so frequently. So he converted half of his passenger side diesel tank into a septic tank. A few weeks after converting his tank, he happened to pull into a truck stop somewhere in the United States and parked for the night after driving longer than he should have. He woke up at 5 a.m. with the dawn just starting to get bright. He climbed out to see beside his truck something that would make him laugh every time he tells this story. On the ground on the right-hand side of the truck was a 5-gallon jerry can, a siphon hose with one end in his tank and the other laying on the ground. Puddle of puke and some puke footprints. Another few feet away, puddle of puke. Another few feet away, another pile of puke. Some dumb son of a bitch tried to siphon his septic tank in the middle of the night. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. Wow, I'm gonna be honest. Reading these really opened my eyes to some of the horrors that truck drivers must see, and some of the things they experience. It really can be quite scary at times, I imagine. I'd like to thank all the people that are currently sending me stories. They're all amazing, and I'm really sorry if I hadn't had the chance to reply to you personally yet. But I'm getting on it, and we will have another subscriber story special coming very soon. So, if you've had a creepy or paranormal experience that you wish to share, feel free to send it to my email, which you can find in the description. You never know, it may make it to the next video. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could smash that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss what I have in store for you next. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter @TheMortisMedia for some secret stuff you won't find anywhere else. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for your viewed video. Please subscribers my channel. If you have any comment or question, please let me know. Thank you.